personal review always.
Welcome back to the arcade. Today we're going to start part number 6 of the Star Wars cabinet repair. And today we're going to do some Bondo work. So let's get started. Alright, well, I finally made it by the auto parts store and got me a 1 pound 12 ounce can of Bondo. Man, it's been a while since I bought any. That stuff is expensive. I think this can was about around $17, I believe. So, but hopefully I'm gonna get a lot of use out of it before it goes bad. I'll have to look and see if they recommend anything about storing it. But I kind of think a lot of times when you buy this type of product, and once you open it up, it's not going to last all that long anyway. A year at the most, probably. Because my other can was stored in the house. The lid was on tight, and it was inside where it's environmentally controlled all the time. So it was just a case of it, I guess, age. It only lasts but so long. Anyway, what we need to do is go ahead and finish preparing the cabinet here. And what I've done here, last time I was out here, is I glued these wood pegs in, and I also put some up on the top edge, but right now we're just going to deal with this side piece here. So what I need to do is trim these up to where they're below the surface of the side of the cabinet here. So I just got my little side cutters here. And I'm just going to go ahead and come in here and just eyeball it and just clip them off to where they're right below the edge of the side of the cabinet. And again, this is just to give the Bondo something to grab onto and adhere to. Okay. Next thing I want to do, since we're going to fill this in and fill in this, the whole thing probably in one swipe, I want to be able to put an edge on it right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of wood here, and I'm going to put it right on the edge and line it up with the edge here. And because there's no way to really clamp this, I'm going to go ahead and put 2 screws in here that'll go into the bottom, and that'll just hold it on here tight. That way we can fill this in with Bondo, and then once it dries, we can come back with the sander and sand it flush and give us a nice flat edge there. Then we'll take the wood back off, and we'll come back with the sander and we'll sand this side flush. And in order to keep the wood from sticking to the Bondo, because Bondo is designed to stick to things, about the only thing it doesn't stick to would probably be certain types of plastics, like plexiglass maybe, and Lexan, and of course whatever they make the spatulas out of, because everybody knows that if you let the Bondo dry on the spatula, all you got to do is bend it and it'll pop right off. But in order to get a nice hard straight edge, I'm going to use this wood. And to keep the wood from sticking, or the Bondo from sticking to the wood, I'm going to try something I ain't never tried before. Instead of using wax paper, I'm going to use some of this golf wax, which is used for it's household paraffin wax for canning, candle making, and other uses. Basically, it's a big crayon, And this kind of was out in the garage, and it kind of melted in the heat of the garage over the summer. But anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take it, and we only need a little small area right here. So I'm just going to take it and rub the wax on the wood. And this should put a coating of wax on it. Think of it as just a big crayon. And yeah, that feels sort of waxy. Let's see. So like I say, it's just a small little area there. So that ought to be plenty. And if it doesn't work, we'll never do it again, right? Okay. So hopefully that's going to keep it from sticking. But even if it don't, it's just a small area. So I don't think we'll be in too big of a bind there. Okay. So what I need to do is just line this up with the edge of the cabinet. And I'm going to take a pocket screw here. And if I can get it started right. Need another screw. Okay, so now we got a nice edge right here. So now we can mix up our Bondo and fill this spot in. Okay, well, time to mix up the Bondo. Now everybody knows how to mix up Bondo, I'm sure. It's pretty simple. You're supposed to measure it out in certain parts. You got your Bondo, and then you got your cream hardener, they call it. But you know, you can add a little bit more, and it'll set up a lot quicker. Add less, and it takes a little bit longer to dry. I kind of like to have it sort of in between. Now I just opened this brand new can I just bought. Look at this. That's pitiful. I mean, the can is only like 2/3 full. It looks like somebody's already took a big scoop out of it. I mean, that's pitiful. I mean, the can that I got that I've used some out of has more in it than this. It's just gone hard. That's pitiful. Anyway, okay, so let's go ahead and mix some up. I got a styrofoam plate here. You can use cardboard, any type of scrap you want to. And we're not going to need a whole lot for this. Probably about I'll probably put about a golf ball, or not quite a golf ball size piece on here. I tend to mix up more than I need usually anyway. And the cream hardener, I usually like to sort of massage the tube a little bit to sort of mix it up, because sometimes when you squeeze it out, liquid comes out before the paste comes out. So I usually like to try to shake it up and sort of mash it up a little bit to sort of mix it up a little bit. Doesn't always work, but I like to try anyway. Alright, so I'm just gonna add a little bit here. Don't need much. And I'm just going to take my little squeegee here. Yeah, and I'll just mix it up with this. And it'll turn kind of a pinkish color from gray to pink because you added that sort of a dark red hardener into it. Okay, that's mixed up pretty good. Let's go ahead and get it on our work. And let's go ahead and fill this in. And what I want to do is sort of take the spreader and sort of punch it in there to make sure that the hardener gets around all those little pieces that I put in there and get into every nook and cranny. And I might not be able to get this in one go. It's sometimes hard to get it. Because when you put it in a big area like that, it likes to pull. And I also had a little area down here. I'm going to put some in there. And I don't think I'm going to be able to get it all in one pass. It's better to get it close, I guess. Sand it down flat. Then you can see where your void is, and then you can go back over it. So we're going to let that dry. Okay, while we're waiting for the side to dry, decided to move up here to this corner here. I only put one wood peg in here because it's very little that I need to fill in right here. I've gone and my forms that I put here, I've put the wax on both sides of them, and right now I got this one spread apart because I want to put a little bit of putty in here before I close the gap so I can sort of make that edge real crisp right there. So I'm going to mix up some more Bondo. I gotta do this kind of quick. All right, I want to put some in this edge first. going to take this little screwdriver out so it'll go back in place. Line it up, tighten my clamp down back here. Then I want to do the same thing on this edge. I just want to put a little bit on there so it'll squeeze out and make a nice edge right there. I'll put this block in place. Get it lined up. And you can see where it's squeezed that Bondo out right there. Now all we got to do is fill in the center. Same thing, we want to make sure we get it down in the cracks real good. And of course we're going to have to recut this edge for the T-molding anyway. I wish that the stuff wasn't as goopy, because you could fill it up a lot better in one pass if it was a little less fluid. But that's the nature of the beast. I'll just have to heap it up a little bit there, and I'll be able to cut that off. But it wants to sag on me. Okay. All right. Well, that's about as best as I can get it. It's not pretty, but we ought to be able to shape that down and sand it with the sander pretty good once it dries. Well, while we're waiting for the top corner to dry, let's come back to the side piece here on the cabinet, and it's probably been about 20-25 minutes now, so that should be pretty dry that we can at least work on it. As you can see, where the little V cutout that we filled in, it sunk in a little bit so you can see the outline of it, but we did build it up a little bit, so when we cut this down, we may not have to add some to it, or if we do, it'll be very little. First thing I'm going to do, I have a hand plane here, which is like a rasp. Some people call it a cheese grater. It resembles a cheese grater, but it's a flat hand rasp. So I'm just going to take it before I put sander on it and see how this works here. And Bondo is very hard stuff when you let it dry up. So yeah, this has already got pretty hard. Harder than I thought it was. I should have done this before it got this hard. So I might have to knock it down with the sander. Okay, well, let's see what the sander does to it. Okay. Must have came unplugged. Technical difficulty here. Okay, well, as you can see, that worked out pretty good. It sanded a lot easier than I thought. I believe I have 150 grit paper on there, so, but it feels pretty smooth. But I do have a low spot here. I do have a little low spot here, and I do have a little low spot here that I should have filled in, which I didn't. So, matter of fact, let me peel some of this back here. Still has some of this aluminum duck on here to sort of protect this, but this needs to be sanded because it's got a little water damage ripple right there anyway. So yeah, let me go ahead and hit this with the sander too. And we'll be able to put another coat on there. Okay, we'll mix some more up and we'll give it another little skim coat, and we got a low spot right here where we have to fill in. All right, I mixed up some more Bondo, so let's put us another little skim coat on here. First I want to get this up here. Sometimes the more you work it, the worse you get. So sometimes you just got to know when to quit when you're ahead, which right now that's not happening. Okay, that looks pretty good there. All right, well, we'll let that set up, and while that's setting up, we can move up top here and see if we can sand this top corner, see what that looks like. All right, well, this time I'm not going to fool with that hand plane. that hand plane is for soft material, so before it gets hard you can probably plane it with that hand plane, but since I've let it get hard, we need the sander. So because I got wood sandwiched on here, I'm using that as my guide, so I can just lay it flat on here and just sand it down until I see my wood on the side here, and that way I know I got it completely flat. Okay, well, might need a little more sanding there, but when I get this clamp out of the way, I'll be able to sand that. But we got it pretty well flat. Might need a little bit more right there. But we got that curved pretty good right there. That's what we wanted to get, that profile. I don't know if it can focus in there. I don't know if that helped or not. No, I don't think it does. The light in here is pretty terrible. But anyway, that's basically what I wanted it to do. I wanted to get that profile back on there. So let me get just a little bit more right here on this bottom corner. Okay, well, let's take the clamps off and see what it looks like and see if the wax is going to release. Okay. That side looks like it came loose pretty good. Now let's see about this side. Yeah, see, that was a success there. Probably going to have to come back once I sand this side down again. Once I sand this side down flat, I'll probably come back in and touch it up with another little coat right there. Might even have a little spot right there. But it's all the same thing. You just keep sanding and bondoing the low spots until you build it all up and get it smooth. So let me take the camera off and we'll see if we can get a close-up of this. Okay, well, here's that corner that had the chip out of it. And as you can see, we put the Bondo in here before we flatten it against here. And I got a nice crisp edge along here. Nice smooth edge along here. And a nice crisp edge on this corner here too. Maybe that's better. It's hard to see. Like I say, the lighting in here isn't all that good, but as you can see, that's a nice, clean, crisp edge right there. And even on this side right here. So the only thing we have to do, of course, we're going to have to do a final sanding to make sure it's smooth. And then I'm going to have to cut a new T-molding groove. Since it closed up from right here all the way down, I'm going to have to cut a new one right down into here. And might have to cut some more down in here, but we'll get to that later. And after we cut the T-molding groove, then we'll come back and we'll put a little bit of primer on here and then tape off the graphics here, and we'll just take and put some primer and then some black paint on here to sort of blend it into the cabinet. Well, the other corner is the exact same. I'm gonna have to cut my pins off here that I put in, and we're gonna do it the same way, only I'm not gonna use this wood here that I got on here now. I'm gonna use the wood that has the profile cut into it that I just took off the other side. And no need to bore you with this. I'm sure you're already bored from watching the other side. So we're going to go ahead and do this off camera, and we might come back to this right here, and when we do the final sanding on this. Okay, well, I've already sanded this side down, and for the most part it seems pretty smooth. I may go ahead and put some primer on here and see what it looks like with the primer, because once you put paint on the surface, you can easily see any imperfections. And sometimes the primer, you can sand some of the imperfections out. And I'm not trying to get this looking like new. I just want it to be presentable and, you know, not to have any chunks out of it. So I believe that's going to do it. But we'll put some primer on it and find out. Okay, let's go over to the other side. I've already done the other corner, so let's take a look at that. Okay, well, the other side, we've already done this corner and sanded it down. And it's looking pretty good. We got a little low spot right there, and over here looks pretty good. So that should be okay right there. But we do have a couple places here where I put the clamps that made a little indention into the wood. So I went ahead and put my straight edge on the bottom of the cabinet here, and I'm gonna go ahead and put a skim coat on here and to build up these little dents and to, you know, just fill in along the edge along here. So we'll put a little skim coat on that next, and then we'll be able to sand it down and kind of get this side a little smoother also. Okay, got another batch of Bondo mixed up here, and let's go ahead and put a coat on here. Okay. And just like that, maybe one little spot here. And ought to be able to sand through that. Maybe a little place right here. Okay, if I mess with that too much, you got to know when to quit with Bondo. So that looks pretty good. And once we sand it, if I have to, I'll put another little skim coat on it. Okay, I decided to put another little skim coat on this side over here. So mix up a little more Bondo. And the main place I need to get is right up here in this little corner. So and it's pulling a little bit. It's almost like it's got chunks in it. And I believe it does. That's odd. Well, most of this is going to get sanded off anyway, because it didn't really need much on there to start with. So I think I'm going to be okay with that. Find out when we sand it. Okay, well, I think this side is dry enough to sand. Now what I did do is I changed my sandpaper. I was using 150 grit, which is kind of aggressive for final sanding. So I've cut back to, I believe this is 3 320 grit. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it is. So let's see how that does on it. Okay, I believe the 320 is not quite aggressive enough. So I'm going to switch back to the 150 until I knock it down a little smoother. It didn't take long to knock it down. Put the 320 back on. Okay, well that knocked it down pretty good, but we're still going to have to put a little skim coat. Got a couple little places here, but not much, but that's looking much better there. But we'll find out for sure. We'll finish putting the skim coats on there, give it a final sanding, and then we'll put some primer on there and see what it looks like. Well, we're outside now. We're on the lift gate of my pickup truck here. Got a little room out here to work, and we're going to be doing some sanding, so it's less messy out here. So back to the kick panel for the front of the game here. This is the original kick panel. If you remember, it had some water damage along the bottom here, and it's got a chunk gone out of the corner. So we're going to rebuild this corner right here. Plus it swelled up, so it's thicker than it should be. So I'm going to try to sand down one side of it to bring it closer back. It's not going to be exact, but try to get it closer back to its original width. And if you remember, we also treated this with Memwax wood hardener, so all the wood is stable now. So this is what I'm going to do with the corner. Might seem a little excessive, but I think it'll be easier in the long run. What I've done is I've taken a piece of 3/4 inch plywood, and I've taken 3/4 inch blocking, and I've made a little frame, and I put my square in here so that I know that I have a square corner. And I went ahead and just stapled the blocking onto the plywood, and that's going to be my guide for redoing this corner and sanding this down to get it back to its original flatness. I've already taken my wax before I stapled the wood down and coated this corner in wax so that the Bondo, when I use Bondo, won't stick to the wood. But it will stick to our kick panel here. So let me go ahead and set this up and we'll get started. Okay, well, I got it in the frame here and it's sitting in here real nice. It's more of a gap here than I thought. I thought it was a little closer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it back out here and I'm going to put a couple of my little wood pegs in here just to give that Bondo on that corner a little something to adhere to. So let's go ahead and do that next. Okay, well, we're just going to go ahead and just drill a couple holes in here, put some pegs in. And I don't know, most of that's going to be sanded down. I think 2's going to do it. I'm not going to overdo it. Okay. I go ahead and take some glue. And I've cut down this one here, sort of split it in half so I can get it in there. Don't have my little screwdriver. Before I used a little screwdriver, but this will work. Just want to get some glue in the hole. Then I'll put a little glue on the peg. And just shove it in the hole. Okay. Now, usually don't take too long for this glue to dry, so I'll go ahead and clean this up, and then we'll come back and we'll cut these off. They're not going to be very long, but it's just something to give the Bondo something to grab onto. Okay, well, I know it don't look like much, but there's the little nubs that we put in there. I cut them off so that they'll fit inside the mold or the frame. So that ought to give the Bondo something to adhere to right on that corner and help it hold on. All right, now we're ready to mix up some Bondo. Okay, now I'm going to slide this back because I want to fill in around this edge. So first I'm just going to put some Bondo in the corner here. Now I'll just slide it in place. Make sure I get it good and tight. I'm going to put a clamp on it down here just so it don't move. Okay. Now we'll just go ahead and squeeze some Bondo in these cracks here. Like I say, this is up higher. We're going to sand it down, so we don't have to worry too much about getting it smooth, because we are going to cut it down to the correct level. So actually that should do it right there. All we have to do now is wait for it to dry, and then we'll come back and sand it with some probably some 150 grit. We'll get that down pretty quick. Well, the Bondo is dry, so now we're going to go ahead and sand this down flat. To make real fast work for it, I put some 40 grit sandpaper on the sander, so it ought to knock this down real quick. Wow, I would have thought that 40 grit sandpaper would have ate right through that. Now, it's getting down, but it's still got a ways to go. But evidently that I put that wood hardener on here. That stuff must really get that wood hard. It's actually hot to the touch right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and sand this down, and when I get it sanded down, we'll be back. Okay, well, it took me a while, but that 40 grit paper got it down pretty good. And after I got it down, then I went over it with some 320 paper. So it's nice and buttery smooth right now. So I got it even all the way across here. So it's back to its regular thickness on this corner. So this whole corner had soaked up and swelled up because of the water damage. But it should be good and solid now. Now all we have to do is crack it loose and hope that the wax I put on here is enough to cause it to release. So I'm going to just pick up on it here a little bit, wiggle it, and there we go. Came right loose. Okay, we got a pretty good looking corner right there. Right here looks like it could be filled in a little more. I should have put a little more Bondo right there on that edge, but I'll take a look at it and put a straight edge on there. If I have to, I'll put some Bondo on that edge and clean this edge up right here. Okay, on the front top edge of the kick plate here, I had a couple pieces that had chips out of it, and I still got to fix this little bit edge on the corner. I decided I'm going to bevel this, put a little bevel on it, and then tape it off, and then paint the bottom edge black. You'll never be able to notice it. So I'm going to put a little Bondo just to bring these places up and to fix this edge right here. So I'll mix some more Bondo, and we'll take care of that real quick. It probably would have been easier if I just went ahead and cut a new kick plate and ordered the new graphic for it, but like I say, I like to try to keep the games as original as possible, and I think I can save it, so that's the route I went. I'm not the kind of person that has to have everything perfect. I just prefer it to be as original as possible. I know some things you can't have all original, and if you take a game, in my opinion, and strip it down, sand it, make it perfect, put all reproduction art on it, it looks good, sure, but it's not original, and that's just my complaint. I don't like that. I mean, it's nice, but it's still not original. Okay, I'm gonna be real easy here, and I'm gonna heat this up on purpose because before it gets hard, I'm gonna come back and trim it with a razor blade. Okay, a little bit more here. All right, now we'll finish this corner right here. And this is on the bottom edge of the cabinet anyway, and it'll have no pressure on it, so I'm not worried about it flaking off or anything. So, matter of fact, since I got some extra here, I might just go ahead and build the edge up here. And if I sand it off, I sand it off. If I don't like it, okay, we'll let that dry a little bit, then I'll come back and trim it with the razor knife. Okay, well, let's see if we can trim any of this yet. Got a razor knife here. And I'm just going to glide it along the edge here. Okay, that worked pretty good. Now, let's see if I can do this. Do the same thing along the bottom edge. Of course, the bottom ain't as smooth, but if I want to get it close, I can sand it the rest of the way. Okay, need something to kind of block this. Put a clamp here. Time is critical. Okay. All right, that'll give me something to push against. Still want to slide a little bit. All right, it's starting to get a little hard. If I had a little straight edge here. Get my square. Let me see how straight it is. It's still a little humped out on this end. Okay, it's getting pretty hard now. But I think that's good enough where I can sand it. Okay, that just pulled that loose right there, so it's not sticking that good. Okay, well, we'll just let it harden up and see what happens. All right, well, it's starting to get dark on me out here, so let me just hit this edge real quick with the sander. See what the edge looks like. Okay, well, that's starting to look pretty good. I'll probably have to come back and touch up a few spots and feather sand these places down here because I don't want to mess up the graphic no more than I have to. And then once I get it all smooth, then I'll tape it off and we'll come back and we'll paint that bottom edge right there with some black paint. So, yeah, I think that's going to work out. Well, the Bondo video is winding down now. We're almost done with the Bondo. The last thing I have left to do are these bottom corners. And if you've been following my videos, you'll know early on we had some damage on the rear corners, and the wood was mostly intact, although it wasn't in all that good a shape. So I just put glue on it and pushed the wood back together and put these blocks and clamps on it. So it's been on there for a while now, several weeks, and maybe even a little bit longer, because this project's taking longer than I thought it would, but I've had other things to deal with, so you know how that goes. So let's go ahead and see what these look like. We'll take it loose and see if we're going to have to do a whole lot to it. I'm expecting to have to do a little Bondo work, but I don't think it's going to be too bad. If you remember this one here, I put wax paper into T-molding groove and put the T-molding back on here before I smashed it together. So let's see if this is going to come out here. And yeah, that came out pretty good. And get this paper off of it. Now I did this before I tried the Mem Wax. In hindsight, I probably should have put some Mem Wax on this and stiffened it up a little bit, but I'm thinking that the wood glue did the same thing. It feels pretty solid in there. Okay, I'm gonna have to get the sander and sand this smooth, and I got a chunk of wood out here and the T-molding groove. I'm gonna have to dig that out and probably fill that in. All right, let's see what the other one looks like. This one wasn't as bad as that side over there. And yes, just still got a lot of soft wood there, so I'm going to have to go ahead and do the same thing to this corner here. I'm going to have to get the Mem Wax out and treat this before I Bondo it. But since it's the same thing I did to the top corners, I'm not going to film that. You all seen what I did to the top corners. So basically that's going to be the same thing. And we'll go ahead and I'll do this. And in the next video, we're going to be dealing with, after all the Bondo has been sanded, I'm going to have to get my router out and reroute the T-molding grooves. Then we're going to have to prime and paint the corners, and then we'll be able to install the T-molding. So that should be the next video. So this is going to do it for the Bondo, and like I say, on the next video I'll review everything I did and show you the finished Bondo product, and we'll go from there. So hope you liked the video so far. If you do, subscribe, give me a thumbs up, and I'll continue on making them.
For us to the radio, always.